Yo ho, this is Captain Dirty here with a new series for you. This is Talking Dirty. Today we're going to be talking about a question that I got from one of my viewers who wanted me to talk about the difference between piracy and griefing. I'm going to expand that a little bit to include PvP and exploits as well. I think all of them are kind of relevant in this conversation. Um, so yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about today. If you have any questions that you'd like to send in for me or the org, uh, feel free to put them in the comments below. I will read them all, and we will start responding to those. So first thing, I think we're going to talk about PvP. So I think everybody knows what PvP is generally, right? It's any interaction between two players, that is resulting in one player winning and one player losing, right? There's no real cooperation in that. The difference being PvE, where you would have players fighting against, AIs, something like that. PvP is any player versus player interactions, right? So that's usually combat, right? The first thing you think about is FPS or ship combat, as far as Star Citizen goes. But I think economics can play into that as well. Jockeying for like good mining claims, or even just racing your opponents, another trader down to the station to be the first one at the terminal to buy your goods, right? That is player versus player combat. You're racing, essentially, right? So I think that's a good baseline, right? Everybody pretty much knows what PvP is. But then what about piracy, right? And I want to go to Wikipedia here and just read the definition of piracy for us. It says piracy is an act of robbery or criminal violence by ship or boat-borne attackers upon another ship or coastal area, typically with the goal of stealing cargo or valuable goods. Right. So in Star Citizen, that is basically a direct. It applies directly to Star Citizen. Except instead of seaborne vessels, now it's space-borne vessels, and sometimes land vessels as well. We haven't really gotten any boats, really. I mean, I guess the 890 floats, but it's a bit beside the point here, right? So people confuse PvP and piracy within the game. And I think it can be difficult to distinguish from the industrialist or target perspective. Is this person trying to rob me, or are they just killing me because they want to see my ship go boom? Can be hard to tell the difference, really. But you're not going to be around to see what happens afterwards. But this is really where you can tell the difference. Is, well, what do they do after you die, right? Do they try and grab your cargo? Do they salvage your ship, or do they just go on to the next spot, right? So that's kind of looking ahead a little bit here at 3.18. Currently, within Star Citizen, a lot of piracy has been ransom or extortion. You can steal some things, but not everything. In fact, it's the opposite. Most things you cannot steal currently in 3.17 at time of filming. So that has kind of been the placeholder, right? If we can't take your goods, then we will threaten the destruction of your goods, essentially. And that is another type of piracy. It is doing as much piracy as the game has allowed people to do in the past. Right? So we're going to see that change in the very near future here. And so, yeah, again, you'll be able to tell the difference between a PvPer and a pirate by what they do after you die. Now, a couple things about PvP and piracy, both I think included in this, is that CIG has repeatedly stated that the targeted harassment of a player or group of players is kind of what they consider griefing here at this point, right? So, what happens if we are working on Ariel, right, and we're locking down the trade stations there, and we hit the same trader not once, not twice, but 3 times in the same night? And this has happened in the past, believe it or not. Right, so is that targeted harassment? I think the answer to that is no, right? We are not intentionally going after that same person over and over again. They happen to be falling into our trap repeatedly, but that's kind of different, right? I don't think it should be on us to give them a pass because we hit them an hour ago in the exact same location, right? And even if we did hit them in a different spot, if we found them legitimately, we're just flying around and they happen to be there, and we're not intentionally like hunting this guy down, then I think it's fair game, right? I'll get into, actually I think now's the good segue actually for what do we consider griefing, right? And I've kind of already stated the targeted harassment of a player or a group of players is one thing. The other is pad ramming. These are the 2 big things that they've stated to this point that are griefing, and by they, CIG, right? It doesn't matter what I think, or you think, or your friend thinks griefing is. What really matters is what CIG considers griefing here, right? It's their game, it's their space, they police it, right? So I think especially the pad ramming thing could be clarified more. There are some questions about that, but before I get into that, I do want to talk a little bit about the targeted harassment. There have been a couple ways in the past and present that people can do this, right? The first way, and this is currently solved, I should clarify, was using the comms to hail someone. And it may not do it the first or second time, but if you did it enough times, you usually could get a marker for that person that you're talking to. And you could use that to track them in the game, and you could use that to harass them, right? That's currently solved, thankfully. About 6 months ago, I think they finally fixed that one. So the current way to do this is, and this isn't any secret that I'm giving it away, right? If you want to target and harass people, this is the first thing that you think of. It's obvious. It's the use of the friends list, right? That is the best way to track players within the game. Currently, we are split up into tiny 100-player servers. There are probably 1,000 of these things going at any given time, maybe more. So it's difficult to just randomly pop into the same server as somebody that you might want to target. And the way that people have been doing this is to just use the friends list. And I want to be clear that I don't endorse this. Chaos Squad does not endorse this. It's actually written into our code. This is not something that we do. But it is something that is possible, and it is something that some people do. So that, I think, definitely is, I think I agree and CIG agrees. That's good, right? We don't want that in the game. Now later on there might be wars between different organizations, and that might be sanctioned, and things might be different in the future when the game is bigger and just different. But for now, that's the way things are. Okay. So the last thing I want to talk about here is exploits. And exploits here... Actually, wait, before I get to that, pad ram. Right, so, okay, we all know that pad ramming is bad, right? If there's a player at a station, like a space station where they spawn their ship, you know, or on a planet where they spawn their ship, it's off limits to ram your spaceship into their spaceship, right? But a big question that a lot of people have had is, well, is it okay to, like, I can use my guns in the armistice zone, so can I just shoot that spaceship on the pad? And the answer to that is yes. I've specifically talked to some representatives from CIG. It was JayTeeStealth, I believe. I hope I pronounced that right. Who put it in very clear terms to me that ramming a ship that is on the pad, about to land on the pad, or just having left the pad, all against the rules, right? And that's pretty clear. But does that mean that I could use my ship to push a ship outside of Armistice Zone? If I'm not trying to kill them, right? I'm just trying to get them out of the Armistice Zone. Is that a red flag there? Is that a yellow flag? I don't know if that's really clear at this point. I'd say probably best not to do that. But I don't think know for sure, right? I think definitely if you use your ship to kill someone that's sitting on a pad, or about to be, or has just left the pad, that's definitely no-go, right? But what if I use my ship to block a hangar that somebody's trying to land in? Is that pad ramming? That doesn't really feel like it, but again, I think it's a gray area, and I wouldn't recommend doing that. Right? So I do think that CIG could be more clear about exactly where the lines are between what can you do and what can't you do, and I honestly think that if there's something that you just can't do, it's against the rules, then they shouldn't make that thing possible within the game. And I think it's really kind of on them to work that out. And I get it, it's an alpha, and they're thinking about other things, but the player experience is probably something you should be thinking about, and players will, if a thing is possible in a game, somebody's gonna do it, whether you want them to or not. So, again, really it's on CIG to find a way to prevent that from happening. But definitely don't do it, because it's a great way to get your account suspended and or banned. Okay, so last thing is exploiting, right? And I think the difference here is exploiting is using game mechanics in a way that is not intended by the creator. It's sometimes a little bit difficult to determine what's the intent sometimes, especially with an alpha. I'll give you one. This might fall into griefing too, but here's another example, right? What about if we have taken a Carrack that's got a med bay, and there are people who have bound themselves to that med bay, and I have myself and 3 of my friends, and we're gunning down everyone that spawns on that med bay for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, while we try and negotiate payment from one or all of those people, right? Is that griefing? I don't think it is. I think that if those players really just did not want to participate in that experience, they can just exit the server and join another server. They're gonna lose 5 minutes maybe, and that kind of sucks. But again, right, it's a thing that's possible within the game. And so if we shouldn't be doing that, then that's kind of on CIG to fix that, right? Now, I've never really found myself in that situation, so I don't actually know if you're stuck on a med bed and you keep on getting shot. If you can just actually I have, but it's been like 2 years or so now, I think. I don't think you can. I don't think you can choose to go back to like your home planet or whatever. But maybe I'm wrong about that. It's been a long time since that's happened. So exploits. I think exploits, generally speaking, the ones that you see in Star Citizen the most are the ones that are wrapped around the trade bugs and duping stuff. And well, this is, I think, kind of cheesy. I don't think it's grounds for like, oh, this player should be banned or something. Um, it doesn't really harm anyone. It's a victimless crime, right? Um, at this point in the game, the economy is not in a state where doing that really makes a difference for other players in a very substantial way. Trade's just kind of fucked, anyways, no matter what you do. But I think there is a line there where maybe some exploits can be used to grief people, right? And I would go back to the call bug, right, where you could call someone and find their location in the world. That's obviously an unintended thing. It's gone now. So, some exploits definitely can lead to griefing and can be used to grief people, but not all, right? So it's a little bit, there's some variation there as well. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. What I think about the whole griefer versus pirate debate. I mean, that whole thing is kind of like, it's a little bit ridiculous, right? I mean, every single time we go and do what we do, people are going to get pissy. They're going to get upset, right? And so they're going to call us names. And sometimes the name that they pick is griefer, right? And, most of the time, I think it's just a lack of education about the game. They don't understand that they're in a PvP game. They don't understand honestly, how dangerous Star Citizen can be. I mean, like I said earlier, you might not even get off the pad without your ship getting blown up. And CIG is totally okay with that as long as you didn't ram that ship. Right? You could torp it, you could gun it down, just don't ram it. So, it's difficult sometimes to tell, especially when you're on the victim side and you're just dead. A lot of times people don't have their comms up, right? They'll have the chat, disabled, and if you try to contact them, they're going to immediately shut that down, right? Because they've been conditioned to because of that call bug and all of the other stupid, irrelevant things that pop up on your HUD all the time. Yeah, it can be difficult to tell, am I getting griefed or am I just getting pirated or PvP'd? I think, the question that I would ask myself if I were in that situation is, well, is it the same person who's coming after me and harassing me? Have they done it several times already? Right? have I like gone to different servers? Is this happening over different days? Then yeah, you're getting griefed at that point. Um, did you just get pad rammed? Yup, you just got griefed, right? Did you just get blown up trying to leave Port Everest 5 times? Um, no, unless you got pad rammed. No, you didn't get griefed. There's a PvP solution, and you could just honestly just server hop and be playing in 2 minutes, right? Um, yeah, and pretty much everything else is free game. I mean, piracy is something that you, for a long time, have needed to be kind of creative to pull off a lot of the times. And I don't know. I think sometimes, I think the medbay case is a fair question for players to ask, right? Is that griefing? It probably feels like it on the receiving end, um, and especially if you haven't like opted into some kind of like PvP event or something like some org event. If this was just happening to you randomly in the game, and you had no idea that this was even like possible that people could do this, well, then one, you're really uneducated about the game that you're playing. Um, and two, it's it's just a state of where the game is at right now that this is possible. Um, it's not like repeated targeted, uh, over a period of time attacks. It's just a one-off thing. That sucks. Hit escape, go back to menus, find a new server again. Right. So, yeah, I think that's where I'm going to end it there. I feel like that's about all I've got to say about what is the difference between piracy and griefing. So yeah, as long as you aren't ramming somebody on the pad or going after them repeatedly, have at it, Pirates. It's free game. All right, thanks for tuning in. Again, if you have any questions that you'd like us to talk about here on the show, feel free to send them in, and we will take a look at them. All right, we'll see you next time.